Good evening, one and all, and welcome to the new show, A Scotsman Blathers About. And as most of you will know, I'm Calum Lykan. I'm your host. I'm your blatherer for the evening. So thank you very much for joining the show that has felt like it's been 30 years in the making. August has not been my month. We're just going to ignore August. In future years to come, it didn't happen. August, we're going to have 11-month years, and August is going to be forgotten about. Basically, August has been my 2020 in a month. It's just been weird. But I'm glad to see you all here for this first episode. And what an exciting episode we have. Tonight's episode is about a place, a location, which I'm kind of, I don't know, I kind of want to go visit now because it's so cool sounding. And I don't think this show's going to do it justice because it's such an awesome place. But before we get into that, just make sure the world's doing okay. Make sure you are all happy. I'm seeing a few comments. Hey, Garden Gnome, how you doing? Making sure you're all happy. And also, I need to point out one thing. This show has a slightly medieval theme to it. So as you can see, I have come with my leprous, scabrous face tonight. I'm going to tell you this before we even get started on the show. I got manly. Oh, yes. Anyone that knows me knows I detest manly things like hard work and dirt and things like that. But I decided, I'm going to get back into doing a little bit of kind of stuff and working with wood and metal again. And I've been having a great time with it, doing stuff that I used to do 10 years ago, wood turning and grinding out blades. But this is a mishap from it, or not even a mishap. I've got all the protective gear, but you're always going to have a little hiccup. So here's a safety warning if you're ever working with metal or wood. Doesn't matter how protective you are, you're still at some point going to pick a little shard of metal out your cheek, or at some point go, why is my nose itchy? Scratch your nose and have a little bit of metal fall out. It's just one of the funs of doing hobbies and crafts. Always good fun. I have my Canadian cup of tea here, guys. My Great White North Canada Bear mug. I'll be slurping my way through this. Here's another quick pointer, folks. If you're ever doing a live show or anything like this, don't drink tea. It basically makes you go gummy. So I'm just going to sound gummy for this whole episode. It's going to be great. Oh, yeah, I clearly didn't take the price tag off this either. So it's just started using it. Oh my god, this is annoying me. I can see it so clearly in the camera. I'm so vain. For a man this joyously divine, I'm so vain. Never even did my moustache properly. Look at this disaster. Well, folks, let's get on with the show. My setup's slightly different tonight, so I've got cables in front of my comments. Thank you, Stephanie. So tonight's episode is kind of cool. This show, basically, a lot of the episodes are suggested by the audience, the themes. So I've got a whole list of things coming up, about another 6 episodes set up already after this one. Because of the wee hiccups we've been having, I wanted to make sure that you guys knew what was coming. Hey, Lorna, how you doing? But this episode is going to be like every other one. It's going to be a blather. It's going to be a random meander through the main theme. I'm thinking of almost like doing total minimal research for every episode and just seeing how we get on, just for fun. But of course, chime in, leave comments. It's all the usual thing. Anyone that's watched one of my shows, you guys are a huge part of it. And if you guys sit and be quiet, then I start to get even more manic and panicky because I'm thinking, what are they doing? Why aren't they making comments? What's going on? What's happening? And, the fact that I'm staring at a camera doesn't help because I can't even see the whites of your eyes. Although if I could through a camera, I think that would be potentially quite terrifying. I'll have to think about that one. Hey, Margaret, Jessup, lovely to see you. Okay, let's go on with the show. Let's actually introduce the theme. This one was given to me by a good friend, Mike, and he loves these unusual kind of things. And another point I'll make about this show is that when I set this up, I was thinking it'd be a very intellectually serious show. That was my thought. I'm going to rant about politics and things, but no. Everyone's given me a lot of cryptozoology stuff, a lot of Scottish stuff, and you know what? To me, that's just more fun. We'll go with what you guys provide. So tonight's episode is about Castle Houska. Now, Castle Houska, I knew nothing about and probably still don't, in all honesty, because there's so much information on this. And I've been reading up and trying to retain it and trying to make sure I've got enough information. But God, it's so exciting and so interesting. So I'm not going to lie, I do have screens all around me with information. I'm not a repository or suppository, we'll decide which one, of information. But basically, I've got enough here to get on with it. What about the reds of our eyes? Yes, well, we'll talk about that one later. Slug of tea, folks. I've got to remember not to slurp. As a Scotsman, we have this thing, we slurp our tea. It's just a delightful sound for anybody that hears. So Castle Houska is a really interesting place. I mean, it's fascinating. Now, before we get into the Castle Houska, let's just paint a picture of a few castles here. I've got some images of castles. Let's see if we can get this to... mouse, move! This wee moose, telling you. Because I've got the two screens, folks, my moose gets jammed in between them both. And it takes a couple of seconds to move across. And then when I do, it shoots to the far corner of the other screen and hides. It's a timorous, coorin beastie. But here we go. Here we go. Screen share. Okay, here we go. Let's begin with style. Oh, why did I do this? Let's try this the other way. There we go. I'll go small, Calum. So when you think of a castle, folks, this is what I always think of. Obviously, this is a beautiful Edinburgh castle. You'll have heard me talk about it. It's just a majestic, just stunning, look at it, shimmering there on top of its volcanic rock, surrounded by greenery. It's a beautiful castle. It's stunning, but that's what people think of. They think of this huge fortification. They think about this big, monstrous beast of a castle, which is designed for one purpose. And it's basically to protect the dwellings around. You know, some castles would encase a whole village or town. Some were on the outskirts, and it was basically designed as a fortification for people to run into. But this is what you think of when you think of a castle. Heavy duty, strong, sturdy, designed to keep people out. Out, in, out, out, I think is the right term. Basically, anyone trying to get in, you're basically going, hey, your mother is a hamster and your father smells of elderberries. That type of thing. That's your castle, okay? All over the world, castles. So we think of things like Edinburgh Castle. We think of things like Windsor Castle. I know I had to put an English one in there. I didn't really know any of the European castles by name, so I couldn't search for them. So therefore, it means that I've just got Windsor and it's English. But it's a nice castle. And again, look, it's sturdy. There you've got a big tower. Basically, you know, this has been a wee bit modern and gentrified for that wee wifey who likes to stay in there every so often. But you get the idea. When you think of a castle, you think about that sturdy image. I mean, all castles are sturdy, they're powerful. I mean, look at the majesty of this one. It's powerful, it's majestic, it's got turrets of purpleness. Yeah, that's not really a real castle, but the point is, all castles were designed for one purpose, and it was basically to protect the people. It was to house people behind thick, heavy walls that could take siege and cannon and trebuchet, and basically that was it. Now, it is just very, very lucky that Edinburgh Castle was built so close to the shops, that Windsor Castle was designed for a wee wifey to have tea in, and that this castle was built with all those kind of rides round. That was just convenience for the people who lived near them. That's just how it goes. But the problem is, when we talk about Castle Houska, we actually talk about a really, really unusual castle. And let's just pull a very quick image up. This is the modern Castle Houska. Now, take that in for a moment, folks. I'm going to stare at this image because I find this place curious. What I love about this is that to me is not a castle. That is a townhouse. That is basically a condominium surrounded by trees. Castle Houska is one of those places that actually defies all castle logic. Now, the castle itself, they talk about being roughly there from the 12th, 13th century, when a Bohemian ruler by the name of Ottokar the second was in reign and power. And more I say Ottokar, I'm thinking that could be my boy's name. You know, if I ever have a son, I might just call him Ottokar because it's going to make him strong. He's going to get the shit kicked out of him, and that'll make him tough. But Ottokar the second, he was in reign. So we're looking at a building that was there from the sort of 12th, 13th century. And the original castle would have looked a bit more like this, they say. This is an artist representation of it. So this just gives you an idea. And as you can see, definitely more castle-like than this. This is actually a more modern adaptation. Renaissance, I think is the term. I'll need to double check that when this is a kind of later adaptation, because this castle has gone through many, changes and existences. The thing is, this site has actually had something on it since they reckon about the 8th century. The Celts and all the various sort of tribes, the Slavic tribes and that, they reckon there would be a wooden fortification there. And it was basically a site that's always had something on it. But the problem is there's always been something curious about this site. And the main curiosity that everybody has is basically this castle, in whatever representation, doesn't actually have kitchens. It doesn't have a water source. It doesn't have really living rooms until more recently. And it was built on top of this, where's that earlier? This craggy bit of rock here, surrounded by a forest. And the forest was so thick and wild, it was said that it wasn't even good for hunting. So what we effectively have here, folks, is a castle being built in the middle of nowhere. The exact kind of location is, I'm just checking, they say it's about 47 kilometers outside of Prague, the north of Prague. But this was built in the middle of the wilds, quite far away from most settlements, no water source, no well, no hunting. So effectively, you have a building which is pointless. Absolutely pointless. And that immediately creates a mystery for anywhere, because why build a castle in the middle of nowhere with no food and no water source, and particularly with no strategic importance? Every historian has said this castle has no rhyme or reason, but it gets more interesting than that. Are you ready? It's good tea. It's not as good as Scottish tea, but it's good. This castle has no kitchen, as I said, no water source, didn't really have any living quarters. If you go to it today, you'll actually notice that a lot of the windows are fake. So you actually look through glass into brick wall. So it wasn't designed for people to enjoy the scenery. In fact, it was designed with one purpose in mind, because when you actually go into it, the courtyard, which I don't think I found a good picture of. Let me just see if I've got let's just see what the next picture is. Said courtyard doesn't actually have any stairs going down to it, they say. You can see there is some access now. But basically, this castle was built not for keeping people out, but they reckon it was actually built to keep people in. All the battlements, all the design is all pointing inwards. There is no defensive structure on the outside, and nearly even in the early days, which brings me back to this one, because this looks like a fortified castle to me. So I cannot believe this is anything about what they're talking about, because it defies all the descriptions that I've read. But this castle was actually built, they say, not to keep people from getting into it, but to actually stop things getting out. Because the most famous thing about Houska Castle, I love the name, Houska, is they actually call it the gateway to hell. For many years before anything was built on this rock, there is a great fissure in the rock, and the local villages, and by local, we're talking about a fair distance by all accounts, were terrified to go anywhere near this kind of rock. Travelers on the road would do their best to avoid going near this castle, or this location. And it was said because this fissure was bottomless and actually reached all the way down to hell. And this is where the story gets great. This is what I love, because people were terrified of this area. The superstition, the folklore, the fear. I'm gonna go big again, folks. Give me a moment. There we go. Scabrous face is back. The folklore, the fear, the tradition in this area was immense. So basically, the gateway to hell, this cavernous, this huge drop. It was said that the locals tried to fill it in with rubbish and rocks, but it just swallowed everything. But they feared going near it because it was said that at night, winged beasts, oh yes, I said it, winged beasts, scaly winged beasties would fly out of it and try and capture people to devour them. It was said that half-formed and shape-shifting beasties would come out, sort of half man and half animal, and it was all there. And these creatures would pour out of this kind of cavern into the world. So people were terrified of it. And this is what I love about this story, because we're getting into great kind of typical kind of hell scenarios of monsters and beasties. And it's created a hell of a lot of stories about this place. When the castle was built, in the sort of 12th, 13th centuries, the purpose of the castle, they say, was actually to seal off this cavern. They had tried to fill it. They'd tried everything and nothing worked. But there is a wee story, and I need to kind of find its origins. Going back to the Celtics. Sorry, folks, I'm just trying to find this exact little segment. So they found, basically, as they were building the castle, the local lord of the area, whose name is very similar to the actual castle, had basically decided he was going to put an end to these myths and legends, and they wanted to find out what was down there. So they go to the local prison, and they offer some prisoners basically freedom. You can get out if you do this one thing. We're going to lower you down into this cave mouth, down into this pit, which they call the gateway to hell. And you tell us what's down there. And if you do that, you can go free. Murderers, all sorts. They were all jumping at this, going, yes, we'll do it. The first man they lowered down, it all went very well. It was very quiet. It was very peaceful. As he disappeared into the darkness, it was all very still. But after about a minute or so, the lines started bucking and bouncing, and from beneath them they could hear screams, terrified, horrified, horrific screams. So quickly they start to pull this man up, and those that pulled him up could not believe their eyes. And the time that he'd been down in that pit, his hair had gone white. It was said that he looked like he'd aged 30 years in the couple of minutes he'd been down there. And all he could do was babble and scream, and he just looked terrified. He was taken to the local asylum, and all he did was rant and rave and babble and scream. And within 2 days of him arriving there, he died. And this is the exact experiment they repeated and repeated and repeated with prisoners all with the same result. So to this day, nobody actually knows what's down there. So it was decided there was only one way to save the world, to save the country, and that was to seal up the actual gateway to hell. And that's when Castle Houska was built on top of this pit. And what they actually did is when they sealed it up, they built, of course, a very proper section of the building on top of it. They built the church. Now, let me see. Do I have the church? Nope, that's not the church. There is a church in here among, here we go. Let me share this. They built the actual church, dedicated it to St. Michael himself. If you don't know much about your Bible, St. Michael was, in fact, the angel who led the armies of heaven against old Louis himself, the devil, and defeated him. I don't know. We can maybe do an episode on the devil. I still think that guy is unfairly judged. But basically, this is the beautiful church, and it's said that right under these cobblestones and stones, this is where the gateway to hell is. But the church itself is fascinating because it actually has some strange depictions. Gosh, I'm going to have to, let's just see, here we go. Some wonderful depictions. This is actually one of the images on the left-hand side of the church, and you'll notice something very unusual about it. This is a woman's body. This is a beast's, a woman's upper torso, and this is a beast's lower torso, almost like a centaur, but it looks to be almost lion-esque. But what makes this picture even more fascinating, if you know anything about your witch lore, about your devilry, anything like that, about the satanic kind of concepts that people had in the old days, you'll notice that she's using an arch. But does anyone notice what hand she is drawing it back with? She is a left-handed archer. And once upon a time, and even in Scotland, in that sophisticated and charming place, folks, if you were left-handed, you were in league with the devil. And that's what this image is depicting. And that's what makes it fascinating, because they've actually painted some of these creatures inside this beautiful church, inside the castle, above the gateway to hell, the gate that was actually designed to seal off these beasties. And I love it. It's absolutely fascinating. Here is some more imagery. I'll get back to the other stuff. Here's some more imagery. As you can see, some of the beasts that have come out of the pit, devouring and tearing and rendering and ripping and gorging themselves on the poor innocent souls that live close by. But the story is fantastic, because here we have like actual depictions of what was supposed to have happened. Now, I appreciate that looks like a bear, Anyone that lives in Canada, I've seen bears. That looks like a bear. This one's a wee bit more sinister. It looks like a flayed puppy dog. I'm not entirely sure what's happening there. But basically, this is what they believed in. These creatures were coming out of this pit, and they were literally flying about, devouring and dragging people down to hell. And I love the lore of this castle. But it's the fact that, going back to what we said, the castle was designed to keep these people, these creatures in. It wasn't a castle designed traditionally, to stop people from getting in. It was to stop people from getting out. And I love the fact that this story, this belief, has actually evolved to create a building. And it's one of the oldest examples of the kind of medieval buildings in Europe, they say. But this is evolved to create this stunning, and I'm going to flick back again, building, which stands to this day, which is designed effectively still to keep demonic forces from overrunning the earth. Let me just see what we've got here. Sinister, yes. I love it, Margaret. Manticore. Thank you, Lindsay. I knew there was a term for that specific one as well. The dog is called Clifford. Liam, you're just so adorable. But yeah, the Castle Houska myth and legend and story. I mean, there's loads online about this, folks. People have done loads of documentaries, really in-depth stuff, and I watched quite a few of them, and I found them fascinating because we have this strange kind of evolution of this place where it goes from this medieval, and over time it falls into disrepair, and people repair it and people buy it, and it changes hands like all kind of castles and homes do. But then we get this other fantastic account. I need to find it because I love this. This place held this kind of power and mystery on the lands. People were terrified of it. By all accounts, nobody really lived there. Once it became this kind of evolution that you're seeing on screen, it was just this fortification to protect the lands around it, but not against scoundrels and bandits. But because it was this fantastic place, and this is a character I need to read up on. I need to find him. Yes. It basically became a place where people who wanted to learn the dark arts or to take advantage of it came to. And one great fellow, and this was in the 17th century during the 30-Year War, he was a Swedish rogue commander and of brigands and mercenaries, and his name was Oronto, and he was actually known, I love this, as a black magician. So he sought out this place and took up residence in there and basically started performing grisly kind of incantations and rituals to try and summon these beasts. But nobody quite knows if these worked or not. But we know in this place there are loads of sightings to this day. And I'm jumping now ahead from the 17th century, but whether these kind of grisly things actually worked or not, we don't know. But people often see, and even to this day, some of these demonic creatures are still, apparently, they escaped before it was sealed up, and they still fly around this place. There's ghostly supernatural sightings in here as well. I mean, I just love this place. I need to visit it. It's in the Czech Republic. I've got to remember not to say Czechoslovakia because it's a force of habit, and we don't like Slovakia. There's reasons for that. But the Czech Republic, I've got to go and visit this place because it's just fascinating. But yeah, this place has had a grisly draw for a long time. This Oronto guy moved in for many years and basically tried all these rites. And as time went by, various people were there. But of course, what good story is not a story without the Nazis? Okay, we're jumping right ahead. The Nazis. We all know that Himmler and his SS had this fascination with the occult. In fact, we all know that Hitler himself was always search out occult relics to help build his power base. So the Nazis actually moved into this place. And you know what? They were sharp dressers, but we don't really agree with their politics. The fact is, the Nazis loved the occult stuff. So they moved in here. And again, let's just go back to the original thing. When the Nazis were doing the Blitzkrieg and taking over all of Europe, they always took strategic locations, right? You know, they were actually military-wise, they did. Oh, God, you've got to be careful when you talk about the Nazis. You don't want to make it sound like you're really supporting them because you don't, because the policies were horrible. Yeah, sharp dressers, I've said that, but the military side of them was quite efficient. And this was one location, I've already said, it has no military or strategic standpoint. There's nothing near it. But yet this was a key target for them, and they took it and moved in. Now, rumours are abound what they did in there, and no one will ever know because, as was always the way with the Nazi, when they moved out of a place, they destroyed all documentation. If you've ever watched any of those shows about the treasure hunts and all that and trying to find all the Nazi gold, you know that they were dastardly swines for destroying evidence. So basically, they did that here. There's a lot of debate that they were trying paranormal things like Oronto before them, trying to summon demons and satanic powers to help influence them in their kind of war efforts. Laboratories were set up to try and work out things like eternal life. Again, something Oronto was doing. He actually was trying to look for immortality through these powers as well. And basically, it looks like these guys kind of followed suit. I better check the comments, make sure I'm not insulting anyone here. Oh, a CC function. Yeah, normally there is, Cliff. I don't know why that's not working. Maybe it's only on YouTube that comes up. But from what I understand, the CC functions don't actually work very well for a Scottish accent. He'll be basically wondering why I'm talking about spaghetti and ducks. And there's Liam sorting that for me. Thank you. Yeah, so the Nazis moved in here and basically they started doing all their dastardly evil stuff. But there's actually another kind of comment about them as well. You know, we thought they were doing, you know, Heinrich Himmler was doing all these occult stuff and trying to gain power, but they actually were wondering if another of the ones, and I need to just get the right term for this, was one of their breeding farms. And if you're unfamiliar with the breeding farms that the Nazis had, this is a great location for it because basically it's out the way. And what they were doing were finding, I'm going to read this bit so nobody can think it's me. Where they found the location where young women of acceptable blood were given stud services. Oh my God, it's awful sounding. By able-bodied SS troopers. And this was all designed to breed the so-called master race. So again, you know, I kind of feel sorry for Houska Castle when I say things like this, because here you've got guys moving in here, basically some trying to seal up the hole by building the castle on top, which must have been torment enough for the brick and mortar. And then basically you have guys moving in here with magical powers trying to say, find our immortality. Then you get the goddamn Nazis moving in generations later, trying to again rip up flagstones and find out where this kind of satanic well is to gain its power, or having to witness poor young ladies being, you know, and as Margaret says in the comments, that's a very straightforward and very, you know, spot on comment, Margaret. But basically for this master race concept, so this poor castle, you know, I'm looking at it and thinking, is it the gateway to hell, or did just we as humans make it a gateway to hell by all our bloody nonsense that we did there as usual? But anyway, getting back to the main point. let's not meander off too much. Castle Houska. It's a fascinating place simply because it has this really diverse history, but it is such a mystery to everyone because it's so out the way. What I love about it, though, is the castle decided to really enhance this whole thing. This is the courtyard. Again, this was sealed off, so at one point there was no access to this. But the castle didn't really do anything to kind of, shall we say, stop the stories going around. As you can see, this lovely room down in the basement, from what I gather, with this steps going down. They basically dressed the place up. Now, I'm not going to lie, folks. As a ghost tour guide in Edinburgh, we did the exact same thing. This, I know this for great dressing. This is just to enhance the environment, to make it look more menacing, scary, and delightful, and it works. It's beautiful. However, I do draw the line at this one. I have no idea why they decided to put a wee stuffed. I'm presuming it's supposed to be a representation of the Dark Lord, and for anyone who's a wee bit younger than most of my viewers, I'm not talking about Voldemort, I'm talking about Satan. The devil, the deal, Old Nick. There's so many there's just loads of them. Let's not get into them. But basically, this one I always think funny because it's kind of like, I know they're trying to make light of it, but it's not good dressing. You know, if you're going to try and scare people and keep the story going, you want something a little bit more kind of shocking. But they basically have dressed it up to keep this story going. There we go. But some of these are actually stone carvings that are actually in the building. So there's a lot of this stuff about there. The current owners, who are wait a minute, where are they? I saw it before. Oh, I've lost the current owners now. Oh, that's ridiculous, Calum. You can't just lose current owners of a medieval castle like that. I mean, what sort of irresponsible guy am I? I mean, basically they were wandering about and now they've just vanished off the page. Bloody typical, Calum. Honestly, I can't have nice things, folks. Just can't have them. But Castle Houska is a really fascinating place because it has all these mysteries. And it's one of the sad things. This show never, even if I had this, even if I was the most solid professional, had it all scripted and solid, this show couldn't do this place justice. It's a phenomenal looking location. Surrounded by these really kind of thick and wild forests. Of course, the house is now being gentrified, as you can see. It's now basically a more Renaissance style. It's been evolved and developed. But, all these buildings here now do have rooms in them and it is being used. But that's over centuries. We're looking at, where are we, 1,200 years of evolution, to get to here. Or if you look at the medieval incantation, we're looking at 800 years of evolution to get to this, a more habitable place to stay. But this building, it still has, under this cheeky wee bit of rock, a great venting rent in the earth, which basically drops down to depths that nobody will probably ever know, because I don't think anyone's ever going to rip it up and actually drop anything down there to test. And that's, actually, I say that. That's an interesting thing. Nobody's actually... Are we still that superstitious that people are afraid to lift up some of those flagstones and drop something down there to measure it? Because that would make a lot more sense if we would do that. That would maybe put a lot... you know me, guys. A good story is a good story. You don't want to ruin a good story ever, right? You want a good story to continue. But it would also be quite nice to see how deep that is, because wouldn't that be really funny? And at the back of my mind, I'm also thinking, is a flagstone going to stop a big winged demon from breaking through? That just seems a wee bit feeble. I know they've put the chapel of St. Michael on top, the great archangel that fought Lucifer, but surely if you're a demon or a devil or something of evil nature, you're not going to be outsmarted by a couple inches of rock. Is that just me? Guys, how do you feel about that? Do you not feel that I don't know. Maybe I'm just being a bit too kind of blunt about that. Maybe my mind's not focusing on the sheer mystery of it. But either way, it would be really interesting to drop something down there, and I would laugh. I would actually wet my kilt laughing if they dropped stuff down there and basically discovered that it was in fact the gateway to hell. I think that would, and that needs to be, guys, it's 2020. Let's do it. Actually, we need to start a petition now. We've got, where are we? About to September. We've got a few months left. We need to get a petition together to get them to open that up and drop something down to test if it's the gateway to hell. We need this year, because basically, how good would it be to sum up 2020 by actually going, fuck, it's all real? And how many of us would then be like, shit, yeah. All those jokes I made when I was doing all that bad stuff about going to hell. Yeah, well, better get my suntan lotion ready, because it's that would just make 2020 amazing. Let me just see where we are with comments here. Bad Calum, yes. You losing things does not surprise me. Is that the Jacob or me? We're right to be superstitious. Can you stay there? I don't know, Lorna. I think there are facilities close by, but I don't know if you can actually stay at the castle. Maybe if you spoke nicely to the new owners, you could. But I know it's been investigated by lots of ghost groups. I actually had something here. I saw just a wee snippet. Oh, Oh, I broke my screen. Wait a minute, Moosey, go over there. Nobody saw anything. Smooth. There's production. It's so smooth and flawless. No one would ever know. My tea's running out. It's okay. I've got Big Blue. So flawless, so smooth. I had something a minute ago. There was a lot of those paranormal guys went in. Ghost Hunters International, Most Haunted went in. The frauds of Most Haunted. Don't get me started in them, folks. That's a whole episode onto itself. Lady Gaga in the vaults. Let me just see what we got here. Comments. I'm just having a quick look. Rivers stop demons. Paul, I love you, big guy. You know that. But we're not doing Tam O'Shanter, okay? Yes, there is that whole philosophy and myth that water would stop witches and demons. A lot of folk tales cover it. A lot of folk tales also counteract it. So yeah, it's a very good comment, but there's a variety of them that say other words. You'd spelunk it. Cliff, I thought that was something else you said there at a moment. I was like, Jesus Christ, man. Are you I mean, it's like, why would you go there just to do that? Honestly, I had a moment. Give me a moment, folks. I actually misread that and had to really focus my words. The flagstones may not stop much, but Michael, the right hand of God, maybe. Yeah, well, that's it. Lindsay, I think that's why they chose all that and built it there and basically did all that, because hoping that naming it after him and doing all the religious-y stuff. Yeah, you can tell. I know. Yeah, I was raised in the church. I should know all this stuff. But yeah, you're right, Lindsay. That's probably why they did that, because they'd be under that kind of belief that the imagery, the belief systems, and all that would save them from it. Margaret, I'm all up for a field trip. We're not taking Cliff because I'm not entirely sure he is meaning spelunk. Maybe he misspelled that. Paul, I've got a blank comment. 2028, it's not the year to test anything. Yeah, I know, Lindsay. But wouldn't it be fun just to open it up just to see in 2020? Why not? What have we got to lose? It's up on TripAdvisor. Excellent. Okay. That really depends on the river. Rivers are no good. Yep. Liam. Yeah, the whole demon thing, the whole witch and demon thing in water, it's a really big kind of, a lot of folklore cover it. But as Liam has pointed, if they're flying beasties, that's a whole different game changer. But yeah, I need to look at that. I never saw this on TripAdvisor, Liam. I generally avoid TripAdvisor. I've never been friends with it. But yeah, Castle Houska, fascinating place. Really in depth, and I love these comments. I'm loving churchy stuff. Yeah, I know, churchy stuff. I'm loving the fact that, you know, a lot of interesting comments with the demon stuff and all that. Some of the imagery that they're depicting from some of these scenes and the descriptions, yes, winged demon type creatures, you know, leathery wings and scales. But the one that I find these kind of human animal crossovers, you know, many different variants they've given, but I find them very interesting because that's a whole different aspect that's never really been associated with in the folklore that I've read with the demonology and satanic side. They're always, there's one or two, don't get me wrong, but those have always been in a completely distinct group amongst themselves. So that's why I love this story in this place, because it's kind of merging so much of the folklore, fantasy, and story and religion into one location, and I'm finding it just so exciting to research, because they are distinct. They're very different, right? When you're looking at religion, you're talking about Oh God, can I say this? I'm going to get shot down. Depending on your belief system, you're talking about one of the greatest stories of all time. Um, great kind of wonderful folk tales, fantasy. There's magic, there's mystery, there's deceit, there's intrigue. I mean, they're fantastic stories. Whether you are religious or not, they are very good stories. But it's a whole different type of story. And then you've got these the more medieval concept with these kind of changeling creatures and very specific different kind of ideas, the fawns. My brain has escaped. Lindsay mentioned it earlier and it's completely gone out my head again. Where are we? Lindsay got it. Yes. The manticore, things like that, wonderful, different kind of things, but a very different, distinct storytelling kind of time period. So I am absolutely kind of fascinated to why this has all been blended together. Any idea why this location in particular became? Paul, the whole thing seems to evolve around this huge fissure, this great, some of them call it a fissure in the rock. I'm probably mispronouncing that with my S's, or just a great pit, a hole in the earth on top of this. I'll pull up the images again. Basically, let me just get this, pop this up. On top of this rock, there is actually a better one. The first one going all the way back. Yeah, see this muckle bit of rock, and these aren't good because when you actually see it from a different angle, it's quite high up. But basically, this rock is quite predominant. It's surrounded by this huge, very thick forest area, which is no good for hunting. And right in this rock, apparently it just appeared, was this huge, big crevice appeared, this massive, big hole. And the villagers tried to fill it up, and it never did. But the rumors started to go that these creatures would come out of it. So that's pretty much it. That's the origins that I found. There isn't anything specific that actually says why it all began, but literally it just goes for, basically starts at this point. And we've got records of settlement on here. They say from 8th, 9th century, but these medieval ones became in the 12th, 13th century time period with Ottokar II, who I think is going to be the name of my son when I have one. Not the second, because that would be weird. Or maybe I should just call him the second. Or Calum Jr. I've always thought Junior would be good. I did want to call him Indy, but, or Hamish. But then basically Krista refused because she knew that I would basically just use the Indiana Jones quotes, We called the dog Hamish. Okay, sorry, back on track. What have we got here? Interesting, Lindsay. Yeah. Well, that's it. This location is really weird because you're right, Lindsay. This place is in the middle of nowhere. I wish I had actually, I wonder if I could, give me a second, folks. I'm just going to do a very quick, see if I can get a map here. Just see if we can get an aerial view or something, because that would actually be quite interesting because I never actually looked. Oh, this silly screen. This silly small screen. Maps, here we go. Let's just see if we can find something here, because I'm really intrigued to see. I mean, this is obviously going to be a modern map. Yeah, here we go. Let's see if I can share this. See if this will work. Okay. This might not work, unfortunately. It's going to be a wee bit small. See if we can do the whole screen. No, it's because I'm on my, unfortunately, this, the map's on my upright screen, my portrait screen. So it's not really, but there is basically Houska Castle in the middle here. And as you can see, oh no, yep. I'm trying to find, yeah. Okay. Zooming out. Yeah. It is kind of in the middle of nowhere, really, isn't it? I don't know if that's a hospice or that looks like, oh, what's that? Oh, a restaurant. So there you go. There is restaurants close by. But yeah, it seems to be kind of in the middle of nowhere, guys. So the whole geography, the whole concept of this place is a complete wonderful mystery, because you know, you've got folklore and you've got all these tales revolving it, but it's in this weird nowhere, and that's what makes it a really cool kind of place. I'm just checking. Hey Taylor, how are you? Thanks for joining this blathering nonsense that I'm doing. Oh, the satellite view. Let's try that. Yeah, thanks, Liam. Unfortunately, it's still going to be really small. Wait a minute. I might. Oh, but if I do that, I can't see myself. Let's just see. Oh, this is see technology, guys. This is why I don't do technology. No, that's not right. I want to share. Why can't I share? Oh, because it's done that horrible thing where I can't share it. Oh, I hate the world. Oh, technology. Let's just see if I can get this to work. Which one would it be? That one? Oh, let's try it. Yay! Look at that. I hope you can still see me, guys. I don't even know if I'm still on the screen. I could be gone. Oh, no, I'm still there. So basically, yeah, there's Castle Houska. Basically, that's a lot better. Thank you, Liam. Anyone that speaks Czech, please chime in right now. It said, oh, there's Prague. Okay, so there you go. So obviously, imagine the medieval Czechoslovakia, whatever it was called, Bohemia, whatever back then. There's your Prague. That would have still been a fairly big centre. And this is basically Castle Houska here, right in this kind of rocky, hilly, valley, foresty, jiggerty, pokerty, buggerty type of place. Okay, I'm gonna get back to me. This technology is just not working. I'm having moments. Where was I? Oh yeah, jiggerty, pokerty, buggerty type of place. Right. So basically, as you can see, guys, it's in the middle of nowhere. Historically, even today, it still seems to be pretty out of the way. So I reckon the mystery of Castle Houska, people are going to go over it. But until we drop, you know what? Okay, you know what I'm saying about opening up the pit again and dropping something down? Even if we drop a coin, you know that old coin test? Because surely if we drop a coin and it hits a demon, they're going to be really pissed off and make a comment about it. And then at least we know we'll have some sort of answer. I mean, we don't need to put cameras and stuff down because that could just be absolutely horrifying. I mean, if what they say about the prisoners was true, the guys that went down came up with white hair looking 30 years older and died 2 days later from complete fear and shock, maybe we don't want to actually see. But, oh, Paul, don't mention the Slavic stuff. You know my view. Actually, Slavic folklore and that is, I mean, interestingly enough, I know Lindsay's an avid folklorist and she loves her story stuff. For those that don't know about like the storytelling traditions, so a lot of people have been raised on Disney, okay? And Disney is fantastic. Don't get me wrong. It introduced the world to folk tales, right? And all these wonderful stories. But the problem is Disney is Disney. If you really want to understand stories, you need to find the proper stories. The Grimm's fairy tales, for example, right? You go out and buy a Grimm's fairy tale book, you're going to effectively get the evolved books that the French court kind of requested. And when they got the stories, the French court went, oh, no, cheese-eating surrender monkeys. You know what they're like. Terrified. They threw the white flag and said, oh, no, I can't. I'm not even going to do a French accent. But basically, they spat out their cheese and fear and panic. They looked at these stories and said, oh, these are too horrific and terrifying for us. Please put more fairies and princesses and fluffy bunnies and the occasional wedge of cheese and maybe some white cloth, because they were very partial to white cloth. And basically, they totally bastardized the fairy tales, the folk tales, the traditional stories of their time. If you actually research storytelling, and that's something I do, I mean, it's something I love doing and finding out more, you find out that the stories are dark. They're joyfully, beautifully dark. They're lovely, absolutely magnificent things. The original Grimms, there's Jack Zipes collated and collected some of the original pieces, and they're totally different. I mean, they are just brutal and dark and wonderful, and like reading the proper Bluebeard, oh, it's like heaven. I mean, out there, the stories always evolve and change, so you're always going to find different evolution of stories. But the Slavic and the old kind of European Germanic tales, etc., I mean, they were brutal. Give you an example. There is something like 8 that I have read variations of Little Red Riding Hood. There's more, don't get me wrong, I have read 8. Starting with your fluffy bunnies, oh, everybody survives and the big bad wolf gets away with it, going all the way through to basically Little Red Riding Hood seducing the big bad wolf by stripping for him. Okay, I mean, basically it's all out there to be found, folks. And when you find the proper stories, you know it. Like, they are dark. You know, the grandmother gets torn apart. Little Red Riding Hood, she doesn't survive very well either. The big bad wolf, you know, basically, imagine 2020 as a fairy tale. That's what the originals were like. They were there to warn. They were there to give valuable life lessons, to educate, but to also put the fucking willies in you, to be honest, to basically remind you, don't go into that dark wood because there are monsters there. Don't go to speak to strangers because people are evil at times. You know, these tales were there to basically remind the kids and the adults that this is not a nice world at times. And okay, we forgot. Okay, I'm going in a rant now. We forgot. Look at the look at the world, people. Like, Castle Houska can wait for a moment because, god damn it, I'm going to open that gate to hell because, frankly, it's probably better than what we've got. Let's make one of them bloody president of America. Jesus Christ, they couldn't do a worse job. But the reality is, all these wonderful folk tales, and this is what pisses me off about the world, we have forgotten about these stories and we've forgotten their lessons and what they're about, because if we hadn't had learned from them, the world would not be burning. People would not be getting shot in the streets. We would not have a divide of color in this world, which is completely fucking ridiculous. People would actually be going, okay, you know what? Yeah, we've been looking at these stories for years. We now understand that A, B, C, D, and we can actually improve. Storytelling is a great craft, folks, and people actually don't even realize that the whole world is storytelling and everything is a story, and all we do is fuck it up. And I'm sorry, I'm having my rant moment. I'm going to look at the comments. Just give me a moment. Give me a moment. Okay, where are we? Nothing in the middle of the woods. Pretty cool. Yeah, that's satellite view. Thank you. Okay, Yarp. I believe so. Slavic folk tales about the bad. Yep. Yes, you're right. There's a lot of that in there, Paul. To be honest, the biggest problem I've got at the moment is a lot of my storytelling books are still in Scotland. I have a huge bookcase or two on storytelling books, and I actually have a couple of Slavic tale books. I've got some of the original Russian folk tales, a couple of different copies of Grimm's. I've got a lot of European folktale books at home, and I always tried to source some of the older ones because they were beautiful and they gave the better stories. And you're absolutely right when you say that. Yep, thank you, Lindsay. Yep. Yes, yeah, I agree with that. Yeah. I'm not even going to mention that comment. Sorry, folks. I'm just checking these comments. People they're flying in here. We're almost Slavs, but yep. Creepy. I can see it in my family. Yes. Yeah, Paul. Honestly, the Slavic stuff was amazing. Okay, thank you. Right, okay. Thankfully, no one fucking lost their shit on me for my little rant there. I do apologize. Yeah, but going back to Castle Houska, you know, here we have this amazing mystery, this wonderful place. And yeah, people have got many theories on it, but it's a great example of basically a whole amalgamation of superstition and folklore and belief, and that kind of crossover is with the Slavic traditions. And you're right, Paul, I'd forgotten about all the kind of crossovers. There's a lot of demon stuff there. I mean, I'm even thinking about a great story, The Soldier in Death, which comes from, I think it's a Russian folktale. Lots of references to demons and things like that. Because when we're talking about demons, of course, and here's something I maybe maybe a crossover that I should have referenced. When the old folk tales talk about demons, they don't necessarily they don't mean Satan. They don't mean the connections that the Christian Catholic world has invoked on us. Going back in history, when what we call organized religion came in, they basically took everything. And their concept was, okay, we can't beat them, we can't eradicate it, so let's just amalgamate, let's bring it into ours. And what they did is they took a lot of the key elements from all the pagan and heathenistic religions and basically absorbed them to try and get those tribes to join. So when we actually tell stories about demons and things like that, we're like, Lucifer and Satan's got nothing to do with it. That is definitely a construct of the organized religions, as I'll term them at the moment. So a lot of the old folk tales, they were basically, when they refer to demons, it's a complete entity. It's actually nothing to do with that kind of Satan devilry type thing. And that makes it even more interesting, because here we have almost let's call it a folklore species unto its own, which has evolved. And yes, there might be influences from religion, but definitely a lot of the folk tales have them in there, and the connection is nothing to do with Satan or hell. So it's I probably should have referenced that a wee bit earlier to kind of make that distinguishing point. Yeah, it can be spirits from the wild. Yeah, it can be anything. So Houska Castle is built in this very interesting place, and as far as I'm aware, there's no what's the term I'm looking for? There's nothing, God damn it, Lykan, your brain is like a puddle of mud at the moment. Stonehenge, sites like that, there's no significance like that, ley lines or anything like that, or anything, in the context of, we had sites which had great power and great reference. There doesn't seem to be anything connected to that with Houska. It just seems to be a superstitious kind of thing which is generated from either real accounts, because let's be honest, it might even have been bears and wolves, but according to everything I've read, there was no hunting. The forest was too thick even for hunting. So it doesn't even seem to have evolved from wild animal attacks. So we have this site which basically had a great fissure in the earth that apparently was bottomless, which, according to locals, creatures would emanate from in the evening and attack. So it makes for a really curious kind of environment, because as far as I can see, there's nothing to connect the dots. Because usually when you look at stories, or you look at environments, or you look at kind of things, you've always got a little bit of connection. Okay, this was a tribal route, this was to do with the solstice, this was to do with this and this, referencing Little Red Riding Hood, this was to do with ABCD, warnings, superstition, going from human kind of nature to even animal nature, to feminine nature as well. It's all there. But Houska doesn't have any of those connections that I can see. If anyone can find any connection along those lines that I've maybe missed in my reading, please let me know. But as far as I can see, it literally stems from a local fear tradition of this strange location. Let me just have a wee look here. Whoa, lots of comments. Evil spiritual. Yep. I'm not as familiar with those terms, names, Paul, but they're, yeah. Legends already. Sorry, folks. I love to read these comments, and I'm terrible because I just go quiet and mumble into my bugger, duck in my head. Yeah. Yeah. The wooden fort's an interesting one, Lindsay, because it's mentioned. I don't even know if there is actually any reference to archaeological evidence there now. Let me just scan this very, very quickly. No, it was the other article I read. I think I saw an article with it in somewhere. There's so many bits of reading I've done on this. It's amazing. Oh, here we go. Yep. Evidence of the legends surrounding the site of Houska Castle are older than the castle itself. There's archaeological evidence of Celtic habitation in this area dating back into antiquity, and Slavic tribes migrated here in the 6th century, mentioned by now here's a name for you, Vaclav Hadžič, in his extensive Czech chronicle published in 1541. So there you go, folks. You need to search out that from 1541 for some more archaeological evidence. But I mean, that's quite interesting. I actually didn't realize that was going as far back as that we actually have evidence. So there you go. Yes, there is some of the evidence from the old Celtic and Slavic tribes migrating, and there is rumors that there was a wooden fort up there. So, and that's what I find curious, because here's the thing. So just to totally go back and put another weird question in the air, there is nothing in any of the information that suggests that when the wooden forts were there was a problem. So when did this all evolve? Because if we've got the 6th century, the 9th century, they were far more superstitious of things then. So they were setting up shop on this area. So this is something that has evolved after that time period. This crack has formed, this pit has manifested, oddly enough, in conjunction with a lot of the early, maybe in conjunction with some of the kind of more modern religious groups, the monks, the I think Slavics. My brain's not working. There's something in there. I know there's a connection in there, and I'm not putting it together. Yeah, there's definitely there's something going through my head, and I'm gonna almost. I don't want to say it. I hate it. I hate it when my brain starts working like this, folks, because here's me now thinking. I know, a rarity. Normally I just open my mouth and but I'm now kind of putting the dots together, but I'm not quite. The terms are escaping me. But I will make reference to something that happened in Edinburgh because it's the easiest way to explain it. The Scottish witch trials, I've mentioned this in a few talks, came into existence in a really heavy way, and particularly in Edinburgh, where basically you could be decried as a witch for anything, hair, tattoos, piercings, different accent. If you weren't from Edinburgh and you came into the city, you could get called out as a witch. Somebody didn't like you, they could call you out as a witch. And the witch trials exploded in Scotland in a really horrendous way. There's plaques all over the place. We burned 300 poor women. And I'm sorry, I'm saying women because quite a lot of the time there was still that belief that only a woman could be a witch. But they burned 300 women up at the castle alone. They duked in the lock hundreds more. They tortured, they executed. I mean, we made I don't want to get into this, folks, but we made torture an art form in that city. We were vile people. Okay, the Scots are horrible people. I'm just saying this now, right? We're lovable, we're delightful, we've invented some great things, but we were really awful people. So we did some horrible things to people in the name of witchcraft. And of course, it was governed by, the religious leaders. It was governed by the church. And it was discovered many, many, many years later when documents were taken and looked at that Basically, the witch trials in Scotland started to come into full swing roughly at the same time as the church attendance started to drop. So basically, you've got the congregations are going down, people are stopping to believe, and then the witch trials suddenly kind of shoot up. And it was actually kind of a lot of study was done into it, and there was a great belief that the witch trials were really strongly fabricated in Scotland and in a lot of places. We know this. Really need to remember to actually put my mouth over the straw and not just eject water all over my studio. My moustache will never be the same. Did this for you, Paul. You wanted this moustache back, so I thought I would give it a go again. It's not the same. I'm getting too old for it. And it's lopsided. One side just does not want to play ball. But yeah, so basically the witch trials came into existence. And it was discovered many years later that the direct correlation between these two things, they believe that in fact the people who strongly perpetrated and shall we say created the sort of panic and fear was in fact the church, which we all kind of know. And what better way to get your congregation numbers back up to where you want them is by basically spreading fear. Because if you're not going to church, there's a good chance you'll get cast as a witch, which means you'll get things like the boot, which means you'll get things like the thumb screws, the periwinkles, which means you'll get things like the cage. Do you want them described? I don't know. Does anyone want to hear some of that gruesome stuff tonight? I don't know. Well, I'm just checking some of these comments. Oh, interesting. Right. I've missed that, Lindsay. So the crack was already there in the 6th century. Okay, so I've not seen that because everything I've read's literally just had a little bit of it's never really referenced the crack until the sort of medieval times is when they go strong on it. But yeah, what I'm wondering is how much of this building was influenced again by the church. How much of it was in fact another one of those superstitions, demons and monsters from hell to basically bring the populace into control, because it's not as if it hasn't happened through generations. So there's all these factors that you always need to consider when you're looking at these things. Yeah, you're right. Actually, that's a very good point, Lindsay. Yeah. Yeah, I knew there was something in my head. But yeah, so there's all this stuff. The problem with the world is folk tales and fairy tales and stories and mysteries. I hate the fact that my brain goes to that way, but just coming from Scotland, I've seen so much stuff. And as I say, the witch trials are a wonderful time period in Scotland. Like, oh God, that's the wrong word. They're an awful time period, but there's so much interesting history and dark history about them. But the sad thing is, when you actually really research it, you discover this undertone of underhanded deceit and people being put through horrible ordeals simply for the fact that the church wanted to get its coin and coffers back up. Pretty awful. Yeah, I totally agree, Lindsay. So this is the thing. I've researched a fair whack on this, but there's lots of stuff that is slipping my mind about Houska. But that's interesting. I'm glad you found that. I'll need to get that resource because I couldn't find any connection or any real reference about this kind of gateway to hell in the earlier sort of 6th to 9th century comments. But then most of them, it's a throwaway comment about just having this wooden fort up there. But anyway, yeah, Castle Houska, really interesting place, really fascinating. I don't think any show can ever do it justice, guys. I think it's one of those places you've got to go. I mean, it looks great. It looks fascinating. I've watched a few ghost shows on it. There's a lot of supernatural stuff still discussed on this. The usuals, you've got the Woman in White. By the way, okay, as a ghost tour guide, the Woman in White's are pretty standard, okay? If you ever watch any haunting, the Woman in White, the Cavalier, and usually the demonic force, okay? Standard. trifecta of hauntings. Maybe the child instead of one of those. Sometimes it's like the woman in white and the child, but usually there's a demonic force. For some reason, they love their demonic forces. Fluff and bubble and nonsense, if you ask me. I mean, honestly, if you're a demonic force, are you really going to hang about in an old building, or are you going to get out there and have some fun? I mean, makes no sense. Oh, here's an old couple. I think I'll just make their life's misery and waste 5 years of my life making their, or 5 years of my existence making their life miserable. Or I could basically go out and have some real fun. You know, there's casinos, there's clubs, there's strip joints. A demon's going to have more fun in them than buggering up some old couple. It's just ridiculous. Anyway, yeah, that's the trifecta usually you get. And Castle Houska has the demon, the winged demon thing is still there. They say there is a lady in white. And apparently, now, it's either a headless horseman or a headless horse. I couldn't quite work it out. I was listening to a podcast about this just to kind of get more information. And the guys are really good, but their segues are a bit loose and weird. And that's coming from a man who doesn't even know what a segue is. Okay. Like, I can't even say I've got my thankfully, a lot of the people that watch these know me, and they know that it will go round the houses and go in different directions to come back, hopefully. But yeah, this does have a lot of hauntings. And as I say, a couple of
headless horsemen with a headless rider, if seen together, an omen of death.
Okay, headless horseman. I don't know if you said that. That was my wife. A headless horseman. Wait a minute. That is a headless horseman. She just said a headless horseman with a headless rider, but I actually think it was a headless horse and a headless horseman. And if they're seen together, it's all omen of death. And again, that's Castle Houska. And that just shows you that my wife was listening to that podcast with me, and she picked up that. And I got confused. I just remember the guy saying, "Is it a headless horse?" Because then it would run into things. And I thought that was quite amusing. Because it's true. Because even a ghost needs a head to see where it's going, folks. Come on. Anyway, I'm not debunking the supernatural. I'm not debunking demonology. I'm not debunking the fantastic or folklore or anything. I will debunk the church, but that's just me. God damn them. See, and I even use our terms, honestly. Gods damn them. Let's go to the old gods. But yeah, Castle Houska, it's a fantastic place, but I'm always a bit curious, and I wonder now how much is true, because in our days we have the technology to investigate this stuff. And I don't know if anyone's ever opened it up and dropped anything down. I don't think there's any records of that. I came across, like, there was another great one, the one in Russia. Where they actually did that digging program, and they dug down. It's in the World Book of Records still. They dug his deepest sort of pipeline down just to see if hell was there, and then they dropped a recorder down, and apparently it gave them all nightmares what they heard, because it does. If you ever listen to the recording of that, it does sound like screaming and tormented souls. And the heat register was way above what they expected it to be. So who knows, folks? Maybe the old stories are right. Maybe there is a wee fellas sitting up there on clouds playing harps, and maybe down there there's a lot of BDSM crazy shit going on and a lot of screaming. Who knows? We'll probably never know until our days are up. But either way, I think most of us agree that down there is probably going to be a bit more fun. All the good magicians. Yeah, probably the good magicians went down there as well, as long as the mime artists went up there. That's all we care about. But anyway, folks, Castle Houska. Here has been my blathering take on it. As you know, this show is never about 100% sticking on subject. This show is never about getting a full educational experience. This show is about blathering and having fun. But hopefully you've picked up a few points on it. There is so much out there. The main point of this show is I think my son is going to be called Otakar. Not the second, because that would just be weird, but Otakar I think is cool because I've just got images of him like taking on the mantle of an otter, you know, like cracking oysters. Yeah, I don't know, just muscles and that. No, you know, that cute little face. Anyway, but yes, Castle Houska. fascinating, interesting, dark, dingy. They made it a wonderful place. They made it very theatrical, and I know that they do a lot of things there. I believe they did host some storytelling or band or feasts in one of the halls now, because the people that own it now, I don't think it's like a lord and lady. I don't think it's quite at that level, but the people that own it try to do things there, but they do say they get a couple of weird things happening, howls, noises, people feel sick and uneasy. The ghost hunters all felt the same. Ancient Celts used to sacrifice humans, perhaps. Oh, you know what, Paul? Human sacrifice is something that's happened throughout the ages, and yeah, you're probably right. There's loads of stuff. I mean, what's the one? There's the ones in Iceland, the Great Caverns. What is it? I forgot his name. Sigurd? No. Fire Dude. My Vikings. What's his name? Surtur. Yeah, I think it's Surtur the Fire. Giant. Oh, my brain is going. But there's a cave, there's a ravine in there with those human sacrifices in there as well to appease him. And of course, that's connected to all the volcanoes and that. But yeah, human sacrifice was a big thing, in the Celtic times. And I'm not surprised that would be happening close to there. And, it makes me wonder, because that's actually a really valid point. How many people maybe were thank you, Paul. Yeah. How many people were sacrificed into this hole to appease what was coming out of it in their minds? There's this archaeological evidence, but unfortunately with something like this, if stuff is being dumped down there, we'll never know. These guys, like the Slavic tribes and the Celts, could have literally been butchering hundreds of people up there, dumping their bodies into the hole just to appease the monsters, the demons, whatever their belief system for it was. So, I mean, that's another really interesting thing to say, Paul, because as I say, I mean, that's like a whole take on it that possibly we'll never know. If they had a fort up there, they could have just been butchering folk and flinging it in, which could have then been, let's, where are we? Share screen. I need to pull you up, and this one. Here's just this one. It's not what I do. So let's look at this image. We're talking about, the rituals, the sacrifice and things like that. But here we have like the superstition, this kind of painting, these guys hunting or trying to kill these strange beasts. But could this have evolved from the fact that the wilder looking Celtic tribes taking people and sacrificing them basically to subdue whatever gods or creatures they believe was coming out of this? And through the time, this is how it's been depicted in a painting rather than basically man killing man. It just opens up a whole can of fantastic and interesting stuff. And this is why I love kind of looking at images like this, that are painted here and designed from historical standpoint, because you just don't know. You don't know how much it's evolved, like the Grimms did. Who changed it? Who tried to soften it? Who tried to remove the fact that no, before this was actually men killing other men and women. This was tribe against tribe. This could have been cannibalism. This could have been basically sacrifice. It just, oh man, yeah, this shit's good. I like this is stuff that I live for, not human sacrifice. That'd be weird. 6th century Valadin. Oh, don't get me started. He was, yes. Oh, man. Apparently there are legends of the Paul condemned prisoners tossed in before the castle was built, but I don't know about that. Yeah, I saw something about that as well, about prisoners being tossed in, but most of them seem to have been given this deal of we will let you go free and lower you down. But again, I did read something about people being tossed into it. And my mind did jump to a sacrifice. Hey, these people are disposable. Let's appease whatever monsters by giving them something. And we're going back generations. We're going back thousands, 1,000 years here, hundreds, depending on which time frame we're looking at. And basically, people's mindsets would be along those lines. We don't know what we're dealing with. Let's just appease it. Let's throw these people to sacrifice. I mean, let's be honest, we still do it today, just in a whole different context. We haven't evolved that much. We've just got a little bit more sophisticated in our means. But I believe even today in some of the more remote places, there are still tribes, or still people that basically sacrifice to volcanoes and things. What was it? The podcast had a very interesting thing. I think it was in Hawaii, and it was something, this is one that Liam gave me. It was something about night walkers or something, and it was quite fascinating. The King's Guard. I mean, here's just a great example of power and strength. The King's Guard was mortified at how easily they had been defeated by this new people that had come to the island, and the king was so disgusted he actually told these men to walk off the cliff and sacrifice themselves because they were so dishonored, and they basically all did it. And now to this day, apparently people still see these fires and images of these people just walking off the cliff. Just fascinating. The superstition and the belief systems out there are amazing. Night walkers. Yes, thank you, darling. It was night walkers. We do human sacrifice via internet, cancel culture. Yes. Yeah, that's something I don't think we want to get into though, Paul. But yeah, that's a really valid point. Basically, I'll kind of put that in a looser sense. Technology, the internet allows us to do human sacrifice so much quicker, in a completely different way. And that's the terrifying world that we live in. But yeah, folks, I'm gonna call it there because we're now hitting about an hour and a half. I see most people are stuck with this rant, so thank you because I did say at the beginning of these, they're not going to be 100% educational. They're basically a bit of fun. Hopefully you learn something, you get a wee bit of knowledge that you might not have known. It comes in a rambling, dramatic, erratic, delightful Scottish way. But basically, the whole concept is just to have some fun and basically get to chat and hopefully take your minds off some of the craziness of the world. Now, I have set up a schedule. I hope you're excited to know, we have had some hiccups with this. We have had some moments. Hopefully I won't come on with more bits of metal and wood stuck in my face. Or maybe I'll come on with like missing an ear or a hand. I mean, look at the state of this hand. This is what I deplore. I hate it. This is manual labor. This is doing things. I was not designed to get dirt. I have dirt under my fingernails. This is a disgrace. But this is the whole idea of trying to do different things and get back into things. You have to get dirty and you earn it, you own it. But yeah, so just to give you an idea of what's coming up next week, we are talking about the Albert Ostman story. The Albert Ostman story, for anybody not familiar, is the very intriguing story about the gentleman who was kidnapped by Bigfoot and taken to a location and lived with a family of Bigfoot. So that's next week. So that should be quite interesting. We'll see what debates go with that. The week after that, I told you guys to message me. Okay, I'm just going to put this up. If anyone is interested in suggesting a topic for the show, please email me at calumlycanstoryteller@gmail.com or Facebook message me or drop me a text message if you know my number. Let's be honest, it's not hard to find. It's all over my Facebook and website. So people have decided to challenge me, and the fourth week's episode, or the week, not next week's, week after, is all about A Scotsman Blathers About fornication. Yes. We are talking about the beast with two backs, bumping uglies, and that's in 2 weeks' time. And something suggests that will get a little bit spicy, just to quote my good friend Paul. And I think that could be quite a fun episode. The plural of Bigfoot is big feet. I don't know. Is that true, Lindsay? If that's true, that's brilliant and so basic for humanity. After fornication, we talk about Kenneth McAlpine. Then, oh man, you guys are really, really like some of the suggestions that have come in. Somebody who knows me so well put this one forward. They want me to talk about Braveheart. Yeah. Somebody wants me to talk about the movie Braveheart. I'm doing it. That's one not to be missed. That will be basically filled with, that will be an X-rated show. Forget fornication. Fornication will be tame compared to me talking about Braveheart. Then we have the hauntings of Greyfriars Kirkyard and then whiskey. So that gives us about a month and a half of episodes to enjoy. And if you have any more suggestions, please message me, put them in the comments, text me, send a carrier pigeon, write it in the sky, send Bigfoot with it. I don't know. Just summon a demon, get them to send it my way. I don't know. Just there's so many options. But yes, please do join me for them. As I say, next week is the Albert Ostman story. So another kind of cryptid and paranormal episode. There's quite a few of them being suggested. I do like the paranormal stuff. The Ostman story I only know briefly, so I've got a lot of research to do in that one. And I promise I will eventually get to the point where I decide that I need to be a little bit more professional and solid with my facts. But you guys know at some point, I'm just going to go off in one. I can't help it. I like the sound of my own voice. So thank you. I'll just belch at the end of my show. Thank you one and all for joining. It has been a great pleasure. I hope this has given you a wee bit of information, a wee bit of fun, just a wee bit of silliness on your Monday evening. I'm going to go and I'm actually going to go and dismantle a couch now. Yeah. Damn it. I forgot I still had that to do. We've got a new sofa set coming tomorrow. And so I now need to go and do more hard work. It's ridiculous. Thank you for joining, folks. I will see you all for the next episode of A Scotsman Blathers About next Monday, 8 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. This coming Thursday, though, we do finally have a guest. There was a little bit of communication with the previous guest error. And a gentleman has stepped in that I've never met. Gareth Mitten. And Gareth is an author. So he's actually going to be our first author on A Scotsman Talks To. And of course, that's the same time, Thursday, 7 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. So please join me for both of those shows. I'm looking forward to speaking to Gareth. He'll be my first author. And then next week, we're talking about one of the Bigfoot incidents. It might lead into a whole Bigfoot thing, but I'm going to try and stay on track with that in case people want a proper Bigfoot one or Big Feet one. I don't know if that's true. I'll need to now research that. But thank you very much, folks. Have a great night. I'm now going to go and do more manual labor. I was hoping to play some COD, but you know what the wife's like. You know, work. Got to get it done. Folks, have a lovely night. She's going to kill me for that. Yeah, I'm going to get slapped. I just know I can feel it brewing. Have a lovely night. I will see you all on Thursday. It's been a great pleasure. And have a lovely week until I see you next. Thanks for joining, and I hope you enjoyed this episode of A Scotsman Blathers About. See you all soon.